It should be right there.
Okay, there they are.
I move that the minutes of the February 2011 meeting be approved.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we have an April 21st, 2011 agenda, and we have a request related to that.
Mr. Chairman, if it please the board, can we please move item number 6, report from the manager of Fayetteville Public Access Television, to immediately after the adoption of the agenda, so Ms. Shelley can, she has some things that she would like to attend later this evening, and so she can have an opportunity to leave the meeting.
I see no problem. Anybody make the motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Approved. Any other comments or questions on the agenda from a board member, public?
I don't believe so.
All right, so do I have a motion to adopt the agenda per se?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Shelley, please.
Thank you so much for doing that, Fritz, and for passing that motion. I'm so excited to be here. This is the end of the first quarter of our new contract with Fayetteville Public Access Television, City of Fayetteville, and I couldn't be more pleased with the outcome. I have a full report that is our quarterly offering to you tonight in your packet. I just want to go over a few of those highlights and discuss in a bit of detail the one complaint that we had. And then if you have any further questions, again, it's really pretty exciting to be at this milestone after December 31st to be at the end of the first 3 months of our new contract, and we got great things to report. I don't know if you've been at the Fayetteville Television Center recently, but it's looking great. We even had a longtime user, Dick Bennett, some of you may know him, come in today and make a point to compliment the staff on how wonderful, and I believe his term was not cluttered, the place looked. And it was just great to have him there doing short takes. So we'll just dive right in if that's all right with you. One of the things that we're really excited about, in spite of all of the weather, and we had many challenges with closings and cancellations for students and classes for the weather, but we exceeded our contractual obligation with the number of new candidate producers by 1 in this first quarter, even with that many cancellations. So to me, that's a really good indicator of now that the foundation of making this transition is under our belts. We're really launching into the next quarter with a lot of outreach, and hopefully we'll bring in great numbers to report to you at the end of next quarter. We had 67 class offerings for this quarter, and if you'll compare that to the entire last year of offered classes, was only 52. So the fact that we offered more in 3 months than we did in an entire year, I think just shows how serious we are about this new vision and focus that the city has for Fayetteville Public Access Television about making it really an incredible education opportunity that's free to Fayetteville residents. And we're certainly stepping up and doing that. And I want to give public kudos to J.R. Curtis, our new Director of Education, for developing and implementing, making good what already, or using what already worked and making new things that work even better. So we telecast 217 new programs. If you'll look later at the program overview, we had a whole lot more new programs than repeat programs. That's a trend we want to see continue. That means people are making new shows, and again, all of this in spite of the weather, and I couldn't be more happy about that. One of the things that really isn't on the paper, though there is a bullet point that addresses it that I really want to speak to out loud, and is just the sense of professionalism. And when I say that, I mean in the best sense of the word, not in any kind of stoic or any kind of way that crushes creativity. In fact, it just seems to be so much of a better sense of all of us working in that building together to provide the best service possible. And I see that for my staff for sure. I'm really glad Lindsay's here because I want to lift her up, and also Fritz, that this has really become such an incredible team effort. I think I can't speak for them, but it's certainly exceeded my expectations for this first quarter. So I do want to say that out loud in front of you, because you may not get that real essence from reading this. We also have updated all the forms. We're constantly looking at the operations and how to make them better, especially, you know, when you, there was such an incredible job done, so much thought put into the contract this year, but operationalizing all of that is, you know, it's causing us to really look and do constant tweaking to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can. And I really want to, we've talked about this before, but I want you to notice this is the first time this year that we've actually tracked by ward the number of users of the Fayetteville Public Access Television. And Ward 4 is really rocking it. I need to go visit with those city council members, I think, and tell them they're doing something right there. If you'll look at the numbers here of the class and workshop participants, Ward 1 we had 3, Ward 2 12, Ward 3 7, and Ward 4 21. I think this will be really interesting to track as we venture into our outreach efforts more with more energy and see if that changes at all. The next page you'll see the program requesters. So really that's how people use, there's really 3 key ways that people use Fayetteville Public Access Television. They take the classes, they request programs be aired on or telecast on Fayetteville Public Access Television, or they come in and take short takes. So that's what we're really tracking to see how are we doing with the city and reaching everybody that is a resident of Fayetteville. And again, you'll see Ward 2 kind of steps it up, and a bit of a competition there for program requesters at 23 versus 26 from Ward 4, but Ward 1 6 and Ward 3 12. So I think that's going to be really interesting to watch since it's never been done quite this way, and hopefully we can beef up some of those numbers. I will kind of segue here into, I've mentioned a couple times our outreach efforts. Since this report was done at the first of the month, we have put together a really sharp Fayetteville Public Access Television brochure. I would have brought it tonight, but I had it at the printer this week, and there's still some tweaking that needs to be done, and I don't want you to really see it till it's at its final place. And we also launched a quarterly highlights, just one-page newsletter that's on the website now. And it's a full 3-color, very nice, but you know, I want to save a little money, so I brought one for each of you. We just wanted a way to do a little extra at the end of each quarter to highlight what's going on at the public access. And you'll see we got a little producer highlight spotlight there that we'll be doing as well, and talking about what might be new at the facility. Just a way to kind of, boom, reach people and tell them what's going on. And I really do want to say about the producer highlight, it's also in the report, one of the most innovative things I saw local residents do is they actually invited their nonprofit organization, which is a group of artists, Arkansas Arts Alliance, to have its monthly meeting in the studio, and they filmed it. So not only did they create programming for Fayetteville Public Access Television, but because they love using the facility, they brought everyone in their organization there. They gave them a little tour. We had a couple of people from that take classes the next week. So I just thought it was a great way that they themselves became ambassadors, and I hope that through our good work we can create many more ambassadors like that are out there telling their friends and their colleagues what a great resource it is there at the Television Center. Looking at what we're doing outside of Fayetteville Public Access Television, as your media, there's a whole section. We certainly have our own office. We've gotten our own contract that we've signed for the first time. But mostly I want to talk to you about what an incredible board we have in place now. It had, since we last met, its first real meeting where all the new board members were present, and we did a mixer. They adopted, for this next quarter, a task force strategy instead of the committee strategy that has been going. If you look at our bylaws for our organization, they're really outdated in so many ways, in the sense that it still refers to that facility as the CAT facility and CAT equipment, which really has no place in the bylaws of our nonprofit organization. I mean, our equipment and facility is really our office on the corner of Center and Church. So just kind of looking at how can we make this organization better moving forward and take it to the next step. And so we have a task force that's looking at outreach, a task force that's looking at finance and fundraising, and a task force that's looking at the overall Fayetteville Public Access Television operations. And that's where they'll be focusing their energy for the next 3 months as we move into the next phase of work. And I want to say that individually, two of the task force came up with, I thought, a brilliant and innovative idea that I pitched to Fritz, and he's looking into it, and that is the possibility of doing an insert about Fayetteville Public Access Television in the water bill mailings. If you talk about how can you spend the least amount of money that you know every penny is going to target the potential users of your product, that's it. It goes to every Fayetteville resident who pays a water bill, and actually a water bill is one of the things you can bring to prove that you're a resident to use Fayetteville Public Access Television. So Fritz is doing some research looking into that. And these are the kinds of ideas that are just coming out of our new board, and I'm just so excited about that. So that's really what I want to highlight from our organizational side of things. And if you look at training, you'll see just the breakdown in what classes that we have offered since this quarter is over. JR, our Director of Education, has really reworked the class schedule. We'll be launching a brand new, updated, exciting class schedule, which we think will be better for our users. Everything we're doing now is really focused on how can we make things better for the users of public access television. I think that's really all of the major highlights I want to talk about, with the exception of the complaint. We did get one complaint, and it is in your packet there. It was from Mr. Michael Wells. Before I get into it, you can read the details of it if you'd like, but I just want to say that the complaint process as outlined in the contract really works. I think this is an example of, this is our complaint process, and this particular one happened to occur when Fritz was not in the office. He was out on a couple of vacation days. So to have a process like that in place that we can rely on, that works, is such a wonderful thing and helps the operations of everyone. In essence, Mr. Wells had a perception that he is one of our series program producers, and so is a gentleman named Chris Harlow. And Chris Harlow actually is a very prolific series producer. I believe he has 3 series on at the same time, and occasionally does individual shows as well. Because of what seemed to Mr. Wells a flood of Mr. Harlow's programming during the scheduling that week, he had a perception that he was being given unfair advantage, or his programs were being shown more. So he made a complaint. We certainly researched it. We found what the issue was. The issue was not that he had been given more shows than Mr. Wells. It was that there had been an operational procedure that when we are low in any given week in new programming, that because series programs are often brand new, and that week they were, that our scheduler, Heather Drain, who does another incredible job, and Flint Woods, we have an incredible staff over there. I just wanted to say all their names out loud. She will fill some of those program slots by playing the series programs more than once, or more than their allotted times, just so there's new programming that's being shown. So in looking at that practice, though, my finding was that there was absolutely no favoritism given. I mean, our goal, what we say, is that we provide free, equal access to everyone. So even if that perception exists, that wasn't good enough for me. So in Mr. Wells bringing this to my attention, that from that operational practice this perception could happen, we've decided to discontinue that practice. So we will never fill extra time with replaying series programming. Series programming always gets multiple plays throughout a week anyway. So I think through this communication, thank Mr. Wells for bringing this to our attention. We resolved the issue with him. We had no further comments or complaints from him. And we were able to make a change in the way we did business that would hopefully prevent this from happening in the future.
So Mr. Wells appeared to be satisfied with
He appears to be. I spoke with him on the telephone, and certainly had a couple of email exchanges with him, and invited him to, certainly follow the procedure after if he was not happy, and also to get back with me if he had any further complaints or concerns, and I did not hear further from him. So.
What do you intend to film with now?
Well, we have an entire library of programming, and we can play the repeat programs or other programs requested by producers. So there's plenty of programming to use. Heather had just used that because series programs tend to be always new, and it was kind of a way that she felt she could give our series producers, because they typically are very regular producers, some extra telecast time.
Sure.
However, she's always done it in a fair and equal basis. If she does it for one series producer, she would always do it for all of the series producers. And I think that's it. I think I'll end on that note unless you have any further questions. Look forward to next month and continuing to bring good numbers to you.
Would like to thank you. Last meeting we had, I asked you how you planned on achieving the contractual quota, and obviously you've exceeded it, as well as the classes. That's huge as well, to be able to do more classes in Q1 than you did all was done all of last year, and the record fundraising for Q1 too.
Right.
Those are three really big and really cool things. So don't lose traction. That's really great.
Well, thank you very much. I do want to know one thing I did leave out, that we are monitoring that with all those great numbers. We're also seeing a lot of cancellations and no-shows at classes. So we'll be keeping an eye on that too, and hopefully we can resolve that issue so that that doesn't cost anyone a slot in a class sometime. But thank you.
Is that
Mr.
tracked
Davis.
in metrics? How many cancellations and things? Do you track those?
Right now, it's a fairly anecdotal thing. JR, our Director of Education, is keeping track of it for us, and sometimes it's just a no-show. He certainly calls people to remind them of their class, but right now that's the way we've been doing it.
I think it would be really interesting, just a good gauge of the public's interest if we could track in any way.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank
Be
you. I
happy
think
to
you've
do
done
that.
a really great job. I think the numbers are really impressive. So thank you for all
Thank
your work,
you.
and thank your staff.
Thank you. I certainly will. I deserve it. Anybody else?
Do you
All right.
get any calls where we are on the channel lineup anymore? Have you had any more of those?
No, I actually have not. We've not had anybody, to my knowledge. I'll double check with my staff because Heather certainly is the one that takes most of the calls with the public. Haven't had very much complications or any complaints that have come to me or concerns over this last entire quarter, actually. So
That's good. Sometimes I'm still encountering people who ask where the stations went, but
right,
I say, didn't you get your cable box?
right.
Huh? Didn't know about that. So
Okay.
anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Geisler.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to echo many of the sentiments that Ann just expressed, and I would also like to reinforce that the city is very pleased with the first quarter performance of our public access contractor, Your Media. They have done a tremendous job this first quarter under some pretty significant constraints and challenges. We had some real significant weather events, as we all remember, that caused some real particular challenges with classes. Several of the no-shows and things and cancellations that she spoke of were due to those weather events. And so coming into something with such a new contract and all of these things that they had to come into, and Ms. Shelley Ann being brand new to the operation as well, I just want to continue to give them good compliments on how they stepped up, and that the city is very pleased with their performance in the first quarter. We have a lot of confidence there's going to continue to be great things. One of the things that I do want to point out is that with both Fayetteville Government Television, and this also pulls in Fayetteville Public Access Television, there have been some significant website revisions, both on accessfayetteville.org, and a brand new website has been created by Your Media as part of their contract. It's faypub.tv. It's FAYPUB.tv, as in Fayetteville Public Television. Faypublic. Faypublic.tv. We played around with a lot of ideas of what can we make this domain be, to really portray what it is. But it is all about public access television in Fayetteville, so therefore faypublic.tv. And
Excuse me, one thing. Is that on the system with the city site?
no,
Or is
it's
it-
hosted on a different server.
Okay.
Is it linked to on the city site?
Well, I was just going to say that if you go to accessfayetteville.org, and in the government section, if you drop down that selector, it now says, where it previously said City Channel 16, which is way too limiting and not descriptive, it now says Fayetteville Government Television. And if you click on Fayetteville Government Television, it will take you to our landing page, which talks about the government channel and the education channel, and of course, Fayetteville Public Access Television. And in the page where it talks about Fayetteville Public Access Television, there's a direct link to faithpublic.tv. And I have to give great compliments to Ann and her team, and especially Flint Woods, who did a particular amount of work on that website. It looks great. It is a chock full of information about classes, what they are when are they offered, what the parameters are. There are forms on that website that people can download and fill out for message board submissions and program submissions. And there's a lot of information about just Fayetteville Public Access Television in general. There's a copy of the quarterly newsletter that she spoke about on there. And they did a tremendous job on it. And we're going to continue to look at it, enhance it as we go forward. One of the plans is to create a forum on there for producers to be able to get information out. For example, producers looking for projects or projects looking for producers. You might have an idea for a television program that you want to do, but you don't have the time or the resources of yourself to actually, or the capability to actually take the classes and learn, and you may want to find someone who's already a certified producer to work with you to bring your vision to reality for public access television. So those are some of the things that we're looking at for there. Again, I'll go back for just a moment and say, on the city's website, Access Fayetteville, we've redone all of the information regarding Fayetteville Government Television and brought it up to date. There was a lot of out-of-date information. So that's been done in the last quarter for our side of the operation. Also, some of the highlights that have been accomplished for the government channel, our primary thing that I wanted to discuss with you for this quarter is that we have implemented a regular program schedule. I spoke with you about that in February and brought you up to speed on that. And I want to thank you on the board for giving us some very constructive feedback on the preliminary proposal for that. And we've made some adjustments to that schedule that brought things more into line with what would be good for our viewers, which was great. For example, the suggestion about the city council, we had some suggestions to move a couple of other programs, which we did in the schedule, but we've implemented that, and that has created a great resource for our viewers now that they know particular programs are scheduled at particular times. So they know that every Thursday at 4 p.m., they can tune in to the Telecommunications Board meeting. Also at 4 a.m., we do these things in a 12-hour schedule throughout the week, so people who are watching late at night can watch late at night. People who are watching during the day, they can watch during the day.
Is that content available through Cox's guide system? So
that's the next step.
Gotcha.
The way Cox Communications online or on-screen guide works is that actually pulls data from a service that is an aggregator, and that service pulls data from all channels all across the country and how that works. And I have to try to get in contact with them. It's kind of a complicated process because some people are not as forthright with information and help as I would like them to be. But it would be helpful if we could just go straight through it. But I also know that Cox has made some changes in some of their public affairs operations and such in the last year, and they're adjusting to some of the things in their new corporate structure, and that's also put some things there. But that's the goal. I would love for us to be able to do that, and then people can use their DVRs if they have a DVR and have that information. That's the goal. That's where we would love to be with that.
Great.
But the first step was to implement a regular programming schedule. We have to have that to get the next there. The next step that we're trying to do to enhance the website is to interface our website with our automation controller, which will allow us to have a real-time program schedule published on the web under Access Fayetteville. So any changes we happen to make, either due to a cancellation of a meeting or a change in programming for whatever reason, will automatically be updated and automatically be reflected on that program schedule on the web. That's an IT issue. Our information technology people are working on that to get that interface working correctly so that can happen. And that will also be something that will be able to be published on the public access television website as well. So they will have a live, constantly updated program schedule published out there as well.
On this, back to the website, that faypublic.tv, is that owned by the city or is that owned by your media, the domain?
That was I don't know if this answers your question. The domain name was registered. Ann, can you answer that question?
It was certainly one of our contractual obligations, so under our contract, we purchased the website. We are the ones that have official ownership for it, but we see it as property of the city because it is Fayetteville Public Access Television as part of our executing the contract for the city.
Okay, so it's protected under the contract. It
Yes.
would be the city's in the end.
Well,
I mean, if there were
Yeah,
some
actually,
change.
even at the
in-
bottom, we put City of Fayetteville with copyright, so
Okay.
we consider it city property.
Great, thank you.
Also,
Oh, yeah, one other question for me, and you next, please. How much does it cost for a nonprofit such as your media to purchase web service like this?
I would have to double check with Flint, but I believe it was $120 for 2 years, if I remember right.
That sounds
We did
about
through
right.
Green Geeks, which we find to be a really great service. That's where we got our domain as well, so.
And you had to purchase the name,
Yeah, yes.
that was included with that 2 years?
Yeah, that's what you're purchasing.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
Just the name, but it doesn't provide the hosting service for the actual
Right.
site.
yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Flint does it, yeah.
Which is it? What was that amount you mentioned for the domain name plus the site for 2 years?
That's for the domain name and to use the site. I mean, that allows us to use that site, and Flint builds and hosts and maintains it for us.
Is there a limitation on how much use you get, how much you could how many pages you can put in?
bandwidth.
No, I don't believe so. Again, that would be a question for my tech guy who set it up, but I don't believe there is.
Yeah, typically there is. It depends on who's hosting the environment, the servers, and you usually pay for bandwidth based on how much incoming traffic.
I was going
something.
to ask, is there anything as far as social media with Twitter and Facebook and whatnot driving traffic to the faypublic.tv site?
That would be definitely part of our outreach efforts in the next quarter. One of the things that we do have, we have an intern who's coming on hopefully in May through the journalism department, who's public relations and marketing, public relations and marketing focused, and that's one of the things we hope that she will do. Is we do have a Facebook page. It's been the one that Community Access Television had prior to this, so that's going to be part of our next phase. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Any other? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Some of the other things that we have been going forward with in the last quarter, if with the television center as a whole, is in early March, both the staff of both your media and the city staff got together and basically repainted the entire interior. We saved several $100s of cost. We were able to source the paint for no cost. Of course, we provided all the labor. I had to spend less than $200 on painting supplies, brushes, rollers, etc., and those kinds of things. But everybody pitched in. We had a great time. The place looks tremendously better. You know, it just looks more inviting. It's brighter, and we've had some great compliments on that. So my compliments to the staff for pitching in on that. That was a great work day that we had. And I invite, of course, anybody to come down and see the facility and the new facility or the new look, because it really looks great. In conjunction with that, some of the things that we're working on is a new graphic look for the government channel. We don't have a real consistent look. We're working on new logos and treatments for graphics, so it will be consistent what you see on the air. And ultimately, that will also translate to a new sign on the front of the building. One of the things that we've done in terms of making our house nicer, so to speak, is that we've cleaned up the front of the building. There were some unused things, some antenna and cables and things that were unused anymore that were in the front of the building. We've taken all that down. It makes it a nice, much cleaner and neater appearance. So as we go forward in the next 30 days, we hope to finalize on a government channel, a new government channel emblem that will be incorporated with a sign that I would like to have on the front of the building that says the City of Fayetteville Television Center, home of Fayetteville Public Access Television and the Fayetteville Government Channel, incorporating their emblem the Fayetteville Public Access Television emblem and the government channel's emblem. The couple of other things that happened that were really nice. We had a visit from State Representative Debbie Hobbs. Ms. Hobbs is a state representative from up in Rogers. Excuse me. She was actually she was down here for another event, and she worked in conjunction with Fayetteville Fayetteville Police Department. And we had a nice visit from her, and she was very impressed. Now, keep in mind that while Fayetteville Public Access Television is only telecast within the city limits of Fayetteville, the Fayetteville Government Channel is telecast throughout the region. So we do have, and I think we'd like to think that we're starting to develop some audience in places like Rogers and Bentonville and Springdale. But it is available to Cox subscribers, and has been for AT&T as well in those areas. We also had a great visit from a group of students from Spring International that are foreign international students that are hosted by Spring International. They have been coming as a group about once a quarter for a while to learn about public access television, learn about government television. And one of the great things that we feel that we can offer them is that in Fayetteville, Arkansas is a unique, very unique presentation, that we have the only public access television station in the state of Arkansas. We have one of the oldest government access or government channels in the state of Arkansas. And one of the things that is always amazing is when I speak to these groups is that they come from countries that don't have commercial television or public access television or government. Their television is state-run television. And when I tell them that the city, the government, pays money to provide this facility for any citizen to come down here, any resident of Fayetteville to come down here and speak whatever they wish to speak, even if it's against the government, they are totally surprised and very pleased. And it's one of those things that is one of those eye-opening experiences that is really, really great to share with people from other countries, and it's a very educational experience. They also get an opportunity to do some work in the studio, and that's very exciting for them. And we're going to increase the number of visits that we get from groups of international students through this organization. I spoke with the lady who organizes these, and she was extremely pleased, very happy with the experience that she had this last time. And so that's also very nice to be able to report to you. Other than that, we just continue to keep things maintained and keep things improved as best we can through the government channel, and producing programming that is informative and is helps keep our government open and accessible for our residents. Does anybody have any questions about anything that's been going on in the last 3 or 4 months?
Sounds like everything going on at the television center is pretty darn good.
Well, we like to think so. We feel really good. I would just have to tell you in summary, we all feel really good about how things are going. It was a rough time, as y'all know, and things are moving forward in a very constructive and very uplifting manner. It really is. We're very pleased with how things are going on down there.
I see on page 13 it talks about the number of producers met the obligation of the contract. Were there any other obligations of the contract, and were those measured? And were there any areas that fell short?
One of the things that we do is we do have a chart of deliverables that was based on the contract, and I can get you a copy of that. And Ann and I sit down. Actually, we have a meeting every week, and we look at where those things are. But we did go through all of the first quarter deliverables, and the only places where your media was just a little bit lacking in their first quarter was in the outreach, but we knew that was probably going to be something that happened. So when we did the deliverables, it really was from a perspective that the major outreach push would necessarily begin in the second quarter. And then the only other place where they actually didn't meet the requirements of the contract was in the workshops. But that was primarily due to the weather. You schedule a workshop on a Saturday evening. There was a great workshop scheduled, and I thought it was going to be very exciting. Tried to do it twice, but it was digital photography of the night sky. David A. Young was scheduled to produce or to present a workshop on how to take pictures of the stars with digital equipment. And both weeks he had it scheduled, It was cloudy. Well, it's kind of hard to take pictures of the night sky when it's cloudy. And so those were, technically, did they fall short? Yes. But in the spirit, they didn't. They really tried. They scheduled them. They were ready to go, but we can't control the weather. So that's not something that we're going to be concerned about from that standpoint.
I think that would be great if we could include in here, I mean, all of the good news, but typically reports also have any areas that need growth. So I think it would be good if we could include both in the future.
Absolutely.
But, that's good. So I think you've done very good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board discussion of Cox communication issues. Any questions or comments you've heard from the public or anything your personal experience of watching? I assume you're all monitoring, all the board members monitor Government Channel and CAT on your other TV constantly, so you know what's going on. I mean, your media. So any questions? Mr. Geisler, you have, thank you, Ms.
Thank
Shelley.
you very much.
Appreciate
Enjoy
you
your
staying
evening.
this long. You have comments on the Cox.
Yes, sir. The one thing I wanted to follow up with is, as I think it was 2 weeks ago on Saturday, Cox Communication has installed the equipment, and it was announced on the square that there is free Wi-Fi access on the Fayetteville Square, and that is provided by Cox Communications. Their technology is in place now, and it seems to be working very well. And I haven't received any complaints about it. As far as I know, the city hasn't received any complaints about that service, but that is up and going now on the square.
Mr. Bemis, who decided to return home rather than stay out in this weather after dark tonight for the meeting, but had been telling us he was going to be here until that storm situation got worse today, did a study on the square today, if you noticed in your email possibly, moving all around the square from different angles, and said the service out there was easy to pick up with his laptop.
Great.
I never saw a laptop in use except in the Saturdays it's been on, except Mrs. Smith, Lindsley, had a laptop out for a demonstration, telling people more about the stations and so forth. On the first Saturday, it was open and it worked fine. But when people all have cell phones walking around, you don't know how many are on the internet and how many are having a conversation with the person walking beside them, which is often common.
I heard that during farmers market that people were actually really thrilled, especially if they didn't have the newest, fastest phone, that they could hop on the Wi-Fi and it was significantly quicker.
So it worked right.
Yes.
And one of the things that's interesting about that is that a lot of today's smartphones automatically switch to a Wi-Fi connection if it's available. I know mine does, and so that also helps with the cell phone, the load on the cell phone systems, and also it's faster and it doesn't drain your battery as much.
Do you see us getting monthly reports or quarterly reports of how many users are connecting to the system on the square, and how much traffic's actually flowing through that?
I will explore that. I'll see if I can get that information and see if we can't get that. I haven't heard anybody until now request that, but
Yeah, I just think it would be really good for the city's planning to really understand how many users are on the current system.
Absolutely.
And as it's growing, what things are we doing to advertise the Wi-Fi?
press releases were done, and I'll have to check to see if
Front
it's
page of the newspapers, certainly.
I saw it
I'm
on
sorry?
Facebook.
Front page of the face
front
of the
page
newspapers
of the newspaper,
and Facebook and
the city's Facebook page, several of our personal Facebook pages we did, especially the members of the communication department. We had events on the square, and to announce it and to promote it. As an ongoing thing, I'm not aware of anything that we would be doing ongoing from this point, but there was a lot of communication in terms of the announcement of the launch.
Yeah, a lot of cities I've seen, they have signs all around, like if you're in a downtown area, just notifying you that you can log into their Wi-Fi for free.
that's a great
Just
idea.
Wondering some way, because I think a lot of people missed, or may have missed the launch if they were out of town, if there's anything that how we could notify users besides it popping up on their phone around the square that it's
I'd hate to
available.
clutter the square, but there are ways to do it in an unobtrusive way.
I thought about that. If there's a way to subtly put signage around the square without it being obnoxious, because I know the city and sign ordinances and all sorts of stuff to keep it pretty.
Yeah, I saw one city, they did it, they had a small logo and address with more information on every store basically in the area that they just put on their windows. I mean, so maybe there's something we can do.
It's also possible we could co-locate those signs with the parking signs, so you have some some nice information there along with the
Something
parking
like
regulations.
you got to pay to park, but the Wi-Fi is free.
You don't have to pay to park on the square, though.
See if you can find a way to make Cox pay
Not
for
on
it.
Saturday.
Yeah.
They'll put their logo on it.
Well, very good.
I have
That
not
sounds
received any calls since since what I reported to you at the February meeting regarding the channel migration of the government channel.
Well, that's good. I'm hoping people catch on. I've told quite a few people you can still get your cable box free if you go out. Make sure it's what should I say, a term of endearment between you and the company. They'll provide it still. People have been successful, even though it's later than October 3rd or whatever it was they had said you had to have yours or something. I had requested. So they've been good about that. Anything else, guys?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so I suppose, Mr. Geisler, you're going to report on the status of the Fayetteville school
Yes, sir.
system operation.
You have a copy of the draft contract in your packet again. I believe that was distributed to you several weeks ago for you to look at. Where the status of that is that at this point it is in legal review with the Fayetteville Public Schools legal team, and it is in legal review with our city attorney's office. We're not anticipating a significant amount of changes to come back. Preliminary approval, preliminary agreement has been made between administration, city administration, public school administration. So now we have to have the legal, the attorneys sign off on it. Then what will happen is that it will go to the public school board, and then it will go to the city council. And the plan is to try to have it to the city council by the second meeting of the city council in May. So what I wanted to do is urge you to provide any advisory information regarding this agreement, and if you want to provide it to me, I will either aggregate it or provide one advisory opinion, and I can pass that on to the city council in the packet that will go to the city council when this goes into the city council's agenda as an agenda item. So that would necessarily need to be done fairly quickly, because the second city council meeting in May will be 2 days before the next meeting of
That
this
was the
board.
question I was going to ask. I hadn't looked at the calendar with that in mind. So, yeah, the council meets the first and third Tuesday, and we meet the
Third Thursday.
third Thursday. So
I didn't see.
doesn't always work out in the same order.
I didn't see anything that seemed out of the ordinary or any reason there might be an issue. Have you had a chance to read through?
I have read it. I didn't have any concerns.
I personally have no concerns. It's like Mr. Pennington does either.
The basic gist of the agreement is that the city has the education channel. It's afforded the education channel through our franchise agreement with Cox Communications. We would just have this agreement in place for the Fayetteville Public School System to operate that channel. No compensation on either side. They would not be compensating the city for it. The city would not be compensating them. But it does define some things just for, it's always good to have something in place in terms of an agreement. Sometimes personnel change and things like that. We're expecting this would be something that would have some longevity, that would be able to be renewed easily on a year-to-year basis. But essentially, the city says, public schools, this channel is yours to operate.
I think on page 3, one of the things I saw under the sponsor credits not included, it talks about the 6 items, etc. Is there any problems with, or do they have any concerns? Has the staff reviewed this, and do you all have any concerns or recommendations to changes to it?
The program sponsorship section was something that we specifically wanted to have in here from the staff's perspective, from this city administration, because one of the things that we are legally bound to with the PEG channels, public access, education, government, is they must remain non-commercial, and part of being non-commercial is that you can't sell the time. And one of the things that we did identify in the past was that it's very easy to cross that line when you might be telecasting a football game or a basketball game where you may have, the school system may have sponsorship for those activities, and in appreciation for the sponsorship to those activities, they had given some announcements on the channel for those organizations. Honestly, it got to a point where they were essentially running commercials on the channel, and we felt like that had crossed the line in terms of it was putting them and the city in a very precarious position. So when we developed the agreement, this is the exact, almost word for word of the sponsorship clauses in the public access contract in terms of program sponsorship. So people would be able to have the opportunity to sponsor the program as a whole and have those announcements, this program is brought to you by, but not 30-second commercials in a break here or a timeout there or something like that.
Sure. I know that at one point they were using those commercials and other school districts in the area to help, raise funds for their program as well. Have they expressed any how they're going to bridge that gap? That fundraising for their equipment, things like that. Have they said how they plan on continuing to maintain their program?
Well, that's why we developed this sponsorship capability.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because this continues to give them the ability to say, okay, Organization A, if you wish to be a program sponsor, say for the first half of this Bulldog football game, those sponsorships can necessarily be monetary. I mean, they can be money.
Sure.
But it can't be, I'm selling you 30 seconds of time.
Yeah.
You can run your commercial every time out, because then that's selling time on the channel.
Simply a donation for being able to sponsor a segment. That makes sense.
Yes, so they still retain that capability.
Sure.
Okay, that sounds good. So, would someone like to make a motion in support of this document as is, and with any expected changes that are going to be made during negotiation?
The only changes that we expect at this point in time may come from the attorneys, and that would be probably some minor wording to make something, being in compliance with a legal issue. The negotiation part of it between the administration, the representatives of the schools administration and the representatives of the city administration, that's done.
I guess what I would ask is that I can file a motion to approve it as is. If it's something that's major, that we just see a copy of it before next board meeting, that way it can be discussed.
Absolutely.
But if it's just verbiage and everything else, then I say approve it.
I would hate to approve a document that hasn't been finalized yet. I mean,
Well, contingent there's no changes.
yeah. I mean,
I
I support the meaning behind the document itself, but I don't.
I'd like to see it one more time once it comes back from the attorneys, if it's changed at all, I think.
Well, okay. Assuming that we've read through it and that it's, if the overall message does not change, we can, right now, we are in favor of it right now, correct? Okay. So there's no reason to really discuss anything else in it, but
Would it be safe to say barring any substantive changes?
I would say so, yes.
What's the time for the school board to see it?
There should be receiving it here in the next week or two. The school board's process is fairly long.
When's their next meeting? Are you aware of that?
I don't know the exact date of their meeting. The school board's process is fairly long. They have a meeting on 1 month where an item will be presented as an information item, and then they won't actually take action on that item until the next month's meeting. but their fiscal year ends in the end of June, and their goal was to have this effective July 1st, which means it would be the beginning of their next fiscal year.
Who was the city's representatives in negotiating the contract?
It was Lindsley Smith, the Director of Communication with the city, myself as the manager of government television, and Susan Norton, who is the Chief Information Officer for Fayetteville Public Schools, and Alan Wilburn was present at the meeting that we had. He's their Public Information Officer. And we did have some other people present. Peggy James is a production instructor, a video production instructor at the high school, and we had Carrie Pollock, who's their technical director for Fayetteville Public Schools Television.
I think what Fritz is trying to communicate is that we'll have no major time to discuss it before the next city council meeting. So unless there's anything major, do we want to approve it, assuming that there's no major changes in it, or do we want to wait until next week?
Let me interject that it is, in the past, historically, these contracts went through this body, and that's a problem with not having a quorum here more than once this year already. We should have looked at this last month. It was already. We had it in the packet.
Yes, sir.
And at that point, forwarded any suggestions for changes, and we could have. But still, if the lawyers aren't finished with it, technically we could hold it. It doesn't have to go to the council, but they need to budget for it. That's the main excuse, is for the school board to budget, have it ready, approved before their budget goes into effect.
There are no budget impacts with this. This is merely an agreement between the city and the public school system for them to operate the channel. They were operating on the channel previously. They were sharing it with the University of Arkansas.
Right.
Now they will have.
They never had a contract like this. The UA had the contract.
The UA had the contract, but this would be just as an agreement between the city and FPS for them to operate the channel 24/7.
So is there any reason that this has to be reviewed and voted on in the next meeting?
According to by the telecom board ordinances, this body is within the purview to review anything that has an impact or has anything to do with the operation of the channels. And so it was provided to you to provide an advisory opinion to the city council when they consider this, when it goes before them.
So if we took time to review it, would there be any impact to business operations? Or?
Looking at it, the school year is almost up. When was this set to go into effect?
It is the timing of it is set to where it will get through the school board and the city council before the end of the fiscal year in June.
Gotcha.
So and there's some juggling back and forth because as I said, the school board will see it 1 month and they'll look at it and it's called an informational item, and then they will not actually take action on it in terms of approving it and voting on it until the next month. As that's going through, it's my understanding that the plan, as I spoke to Lindsley Smith about what the plan for the city was for our timing was for this to go to the city council in the second council meeting of May.
Sure.
Now, what I can do is
so the school board at that point will have seen it one time.
They will have seen it. Their attorney will have signed off on it, and it's kind of a timing juggling thing here because if we delay it with the city council past May, then there's every possibility that we won't be able to get it on the agenda again until after the end of the fiscal year for the school system.
Under the assumption that none of us have any significant issues with it, and that, as you're telling me, the changes that are going to be made will be just verbiage and just real minor changes, if anything, I guess we can go ahead and hold it until next month's meeting with the intent to have a quorum and go ahead and get it pushed through and ready for them.
Our review has no impact on the timing.
What your review will do.
No. It will go forward without us, with or without us. I mean, we can.
That's true.
we can approve it, we can say we don't like it, we
It's
can't
still
hold
gonna go
it.
before council, yeah.
If
But
you-
but we're not requesting to hold it at this point, so no.
Your opinion, if you want to communicate one, will be included in the agenda item packet when it goes to the agenda session for the city council. And at that time, then if you have an opinion that might necessarily be negative, you know, it is within the purview of the city council or a council member to say, hey, the telecom board doesn't like this for this reason. We need to step back. They could do that. Or if your opinion is favorable. One way or another, I believe once it goes into the packet, it goes to the agenda session, I'm sure there will be a city council member that will ask the question, what does the telecom board think about this? So that's why we wanted to get some kind of statement from the board to present and for them and to go forward with that. I did provide this document several weeks ago, and I know it was on the agenda last month. We wanted to try to give the board an opportunity to develop an advisory opinion for the city council.
Then I'd go with Russ's earlier motion, and I assume it's kind of been amended over the course of the discussion.
Well, give us your lawyerly language if you choose to make a motion, please.
Do you want me to restate it?
You can say it however you want to state it, Mr. Pennington.
Let me say it's discussion before you.
I would say, pending that there's no significant changes, I assume that Mr. Giesler would let us know before the next telecom meeting if there are significant changes, which we can review at the next meeting. But assuming that the meat of this document, the significant information stays the same, that I move the motion to say that we are in agreement with this document.
I would second that.
Okay, discussion first, please, and I'll start that process. Historically, this is the first year that I've seen a new contract for the educational channel. UATV held back and refused to negotiate, or whatever the description would be appropriate in this case. And nobody pushed it because they had their own equipment. They're operating independently, and they were hoping to have a separate channel, and now they have that. So this is the first time that the school system's ever had this channel totally to its own. And so it's the first contract made with them. Historically, those things were there might have been 10 meetings of a committee of the telecom board negotiating this contract. Actually, we're now in a new era when the policy documents you guys were not here to vote on pretty much turn this over to the city side, while you represent the council. You are appointed by the council, and the city administration is a separate thing from the council per se. So at this point, the administration is doing it, and the council still has to approve it, and it may have no bearing. In the past, it would not have gone to the council without going through this board.
Right.
At this point, we have to make that decision, and I see nothing wrong with this document myself. I'm sure the lawyers will find a few words, and that's what you guys get paid for, right?
That's true.
So at this point, any other comment before you guys vote?
I don't believe so. It's a necessary document, and it seems like everyone so far has been okay with the outcome of it. So,
I guess the only question is, how is the board's opinion drafted? I mean, we know the process is shared with the city council. I mean,
ultimately,
do you draft the opinion? How does this happen?
It's simply, in this case, it's in our minutes that we
Just a
approve.
recommendation to.
Yeah.
upon city council asking our stance on it, then it could be brought that a board member of the telecom board is not pleased or happy with the way something's phrased, or would suggest something be added.
Are you or Lindsley at the meeting when they ask, what's the telecom board's take on this? do you say, oh, they were in support of it?
Well, if we were in that situation, that statement will be put in the supporting documentation for the agenda item.
Okay.
And those documents go to city council members at least a week in advance of the agenda session. So they have had a time, and I don't know if you've ever seen an agenda packet for the city council. Sometimes they're 2.5 inches thick. But there's a lot of supporting documentation that goes in those, and one of the items that goes into every agenda, one of the documents that goes into every agenda item is a memo. In this particular case, this memo will be written by Lindsley, since she's the Director of Communication, and it states all of the background, a lot of what Mr. Shepard has said, and a lot of what we discussed in terms of why we need an agreement and why we're bringing this to the council. In that memo, it will be stated what the opinion of the Telecommunications Board is. If you state a negative opinion, I will be at that meeting to answer any questions and representative of you, because I am your liaison. And I would be there to try to answer any questions regarding that negative opinion if someone was there. If it's in support, you don't really need to have somebody saying, again, hey, we're in support.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, it passed. And is there any report from the Internet Committee? Or is there an Internet Committee?
I think last meeting did we form an internet subcommittee?
I think you and Brandon were added to it.
Oh, see, I thought it was you and Brandon that
No,
were
no.
added.
I was only on the complaint procedure committee.
I don't remember what the minutes say on that
Or
subject.
maybe it was
but
Michael that was added. I think it was Michael and
Well,
Brandon.
I think we decided that Michael was.
Yes, in absentia, you were added to the internet committee.
And the
With Mr.
complaint
Lader.
committee.
To answer your question, I do not believe there is a report from the Internet Committee.
No report.
Deferred but nominated Spencer. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Pennington.
Okay.
All right, report deferred. That's what I was expecting, but for the public who may be interested, there's no report available. Report, although the discussion of the Wi-Fi downtown filled that need to some extent. That was one of the goals of the Internet Committee a couple of years ago. So
When does the Internet Committee meet?
Whenever you want.
whenever the chairman and the other two members decide to meet.
Where's this in the minutes? I'll find it later.
Okay.
It happened, I promise.
Let's see.
I can
Okay,
verify that.
Mr. Bemis, who was unable to stay late tonight, was hoping to hear the Complaint Procedure Committee report.
I believe
An
he.
update on that.
I believe he read through it. Did he not? And said that he was pleased with it
Well,
so far.
I'll be brief on that. We met and basically asked the city staff to prepare a proposed document for our review. We received that, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, but it was not in time. I haven't had time to schedule another subcommittee meeting, and I apologize for that. But I hope we can schedule another subcommittee meeting to look more closely at it. I'd hate to get into much discussion here because I just haven't had time to closely look at it.
Sure.
So
And we
I
can-
want to schedule sometime in the next 2 weeks with Brandon and Russ and anybody else who wants to join to sit down and look at it a little more closely.
Okay, in relation to that, now, I look back trying to find that document about it myself, and whether I was sent it or not, I would hope that we maintain the policy of anything business related to this going to everybody involved, including members of the public who requested, such as Mr. Bemis and former station manager and former member of this board, Marvin Hilton, he hasn't been participating lately, but he's still interested in what goes on, and he is still the standing expert on the past of this station. He was manager 13 years and on this board 2 years after that. But anyway, So we always appreciate the advice of anybody who's more experienced than we are. And I've been on here 3 years and haven't learned enough to do it well yet.
Well, I think the document was sent directly to the members of the subcommittee, and I can't fault Mr. Geisler for doing it that way. I think Mr. Bemis just wanted to see what we were doing and what the outcome of it was. So in the future, I'll make sure everybody's included on emails.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Windstream KDL Incorporated request to use city right-of-way and utility easements for fiber optic installation. Mr. Geisler, you're up again.
I'm up again.
Are you getting hoarse yet?
This definitely falls within the purview of this board as your duties to be aware of telecommunications issues in the city. The city received a request from a company called Windstream KDL Inc. Windstream is a well-known internet service provider in some of the rural areas of northwest Arkansas. KDL was purchased by Windstream Communications late last year. KDL was and continues to be a wholesale provider of internet connectivity. And when I say wholesale providers, they don't provide that last mile. People, retail customers like myself, I can't call them and say, can I get internet access from my house? That's not what they do. They provide what is commonly called dark fiber. And dark fiber is a term that's used for fiber optic connectivity that is established in an area, and then bandwidth is sold to customers on that fiber optic network. They provide connectivity. KDL has provided connectivity for point-to-point, city to city, for large traffic and large bandwidth customers. Like I said, on a wholesale basis, if you're a large company and you have multiple locations, you might be a retail company that has locations in several cities. That one might be a situation where you would contract with KDL to provide your connectivity rather than one of the retail organizations. The reason I bring this to your attention is that Windstream KDL Inc. has sent a request to the city of Fayetteville to enter into a franchise agreement to use the city's rights of way to install fiber optic cabling to provide wholesale, what they say wholesale internet connectivity services. That agreement at this point in time, there's not been an agreement that's entered into. The agreement tentative agreement that they sent us, I say us, the city administration, was one that was actually they entered into with the city of Fort Smith. The city's position at this point in time is that we are not agreeing to anything with Windstream KDL until we have an opportunity to have some more meetings with them. We want to explore more of what they have in mind to provide in terms of service, and also what their future plans are. So we ensure that the city's rights of way are used appropriately, and that the city is fairly compensated for that.
And Mr. Geisler, at this moment, I think we need to clarify, this would mean digging in the rights of way to provide the fiber optic.
Either buried cable or aerial. It could be either. It could be both. Now, I would not suspect that they would go and buy new poles and install new poles. That wouldn't be something. They would rent pole space from SWEPCO or Ozarks Electric if they were going aerial. In the areas where they would not be going aerial, it wouldn't necessarily be underground. Their construction process I'm not familiar with. I don't know if they would be digging to bury cable, additional cable, or not. That's not a question I can answer at this point in time. But that is a question that I will keep on the list
if you witnessed when the fiber optic came into certain places like the university campus, it's quite a big dig that they managed to do there. They used the ditches, the grassy swales, we like to call them, along Razorback Road and so forth. So it is something that you will hear about later.
That, I would like to know
From the
what the process is on that, because I know recently Cox has changed the way that they're burying some of their cable, and it's very unobtrusive. They've got a little truck that can do it very subtly. I'm more curious about, have they specified where specifically they are wanting to run these lines?
No, we have not. Like I said, we just got a letter from them, and Kit Williams, city attorney, has received a couple of emails requesting that the city of Fayetteville look at the possibility of entering, of them getting some space in our rights of way.
Sure. Well,
That's where it is, and it's the reason I'm bringing it to you is because it is at that stage where they have just come in and said, hey.
do you personally anticipate this being something that's fast-tracked and moves quickly, or do you think this is something that'll be drawn out over for several months?
I think we're going to have some very specific meetings with these people. We have, the city administration has a lot of questions for them.
Sure. Will these be public meetings or these private meetings?
Initially, I think there'll be private meetings, but I do know that we will make sure that we have some public input sessions regarding this if it goes forward past this. It would be necessary for us to have public input sessions, and it would also, I think, would be very appropriate as this goes forward, if it gets to this point, that representatives of this company come and address this board.
Exactly.
I think that, yeah, the Windstream could be a great thing for Fayetteville and Northwest Arkansas, but I do appreciate you letting us know that it's on the horizon.
And I wanted that, and that is it. I wanted to give you a heads up on that. And this does bring up one issue that I would like to present to the board for the consideration for very shortly. It's something to think about as you go forward, to be considering. And this is a telecommunications issue that not only affects the city of Fayetteville and the state of Arkansas, but the entire country. This request from Windstream KDL brings this to the fore for the city of Fayetteville. And the reason I bring this to your attention is because it deals with that particular issue and the use of the city's rights of way for telecommunication infrastructure. Traditionally, in the past, there have been a very clearly defined difference between the services that were offered by telecommunication services providers. And what I mean by that is that a telephone company provided telephone service. They provided voice service. You pick up the phone, you call somebody. A cable company like Time Warner, Comcast, Cox Communications provided television cable services. And as we've gone through the development of technology and the development of telecommunications technology, as that's moved forward, those lines are becoming very, very blurred. And to the effect that the companies that provide these services are recognizing that the traditional forms of franchise agreements and the traditional legal structure that has been in support of some of these things does not necessarily support the new technologies. AT&T provides telephone service, but they also provide internet activity, internet connectivity. They also provide television service. Cox Communications was traditionally a television service provider. You got TV from them and that was it. But now they also provide internet connectivity and telephone service. So those lines are becoming very, very blurred. What that means to us as a city and what that means to our infrastructure is that there are companies that are utilizing our city rights of way for services, to provide services that were never within the traditional services in which they provided. There are also confusions regarding who controls, what governmental organization is the controlling organization. For example, a telephone company is regulated on the state level by the Public Service Commission, but a cable company, cable television company, is regulated on the municipal level by the city administration. Those things are all across the United States. Those things are being dealt with on the state level. And what I mean by that is that the telecommunication services providers are going to state legislatures. They're going to the legislators themselves, and they are working with the states to create what we have in this sector have come to term statewide franchising. Well, it's kind of a misnomer because you're not really franchising anymore. However, I bring this to your attention because it will have a significant impact on how the city can administer its rights of way, and that for telecommunications infrastructure, and that falls directly within the purview of this board. My concern, as I keep an eye on this industry and this sector, is twofold. One is that as this goes forward, that the city of Fayetteville may lose some of its ability to negotiate with and to even control some of its rights of way for telecommunications infrastructure. That's a very significant concern of mine. It's happened in state after state after state. Actually, Arkansas is a minority in the fact that we don't have a statewide controlling situation with this. The second part of my concern with that has to deal with the fact that as this has happened throughout the country, when the telecommunication services providers have created these statewide laws regarding how they're conducted, many of the protections and many of the provisions for public and government television are eliminated. What does that mean in real terms? Public access and government channels all across the country are going dark because of statewide franchising. It is a significant concern to the extent that there is federal legislation before Congress was in the last session, and it didn't get considered. It will be brought up again, called the Community Access Preservation Act, or CAP Act. I encourage you to do a search on that and research some of that. You can go to the Alliance for Community Media, the National Association of Television Officers and Advisors, and there are organizations that are working to promote that. That legislation on the federal level is designed to preserve our community access, our public access, and our government television. This is a concern of mine. I bring it to you gentlemen on this board because you are the point for the city of Fayetteville to be looking at these types of issues because they have a direct impact on telecommunications infrastructure of our city. 10 years ago, this started. We're behind the curve. I'm anticipating that somewhere in the not too distant future that we will have telecommunications services providers going to our state legislators. They have lobbyists down in Little Rock. They have people that speak on these issues to our legislators all the time. And my concern is that the city needs to be well represented, and the city of Fayetteville needs to be a leader in this situation. And I bring that to you so you can determine how the Telecommunications Board would like to move forward with that. And I appreciate your time and listening to my concerns regarding those issues.
Thank you. That's one of the most impressive presentations you've ever made. It was powerful. And if Mr. Bemis were here, he would give you thanks and congratulations and an amen, because he's been talking about that for several years ahead of time. I mean, he reads all these things on all the media nationally and stays up with a lot of things. So, Jim, when you see this tomorrow night or whatever it's on internet or whatever, you'll see something very important that came up tonight that we all have to think about. And it does emphasize the importance of what you guys will be doing long after I drop off this thing. You will be dealing with this kind of thing and trying to retain local control and see that we have the relatively great service here and the kind of open government because of our public channels, both of them, all three of them really. There was a time a few years ago the school board did not use those channels to broadcast their own meetings. And if you think about it, the University of Arkansas board, have you ever seen one of their meetings on UATV? I've seen them in the past, but not in a long time, so I'm not sure they're doing it, but I don't monitor it as closely as I did a few years ago. Anyhow, thank you, Fritz, very much for that. And would you provide us the documents as they become available by email or whatever, so we don't wait till the meeting? And
Absolutely.
those are things we all need to be thinking Okay, we have no one from the public here to comment or complain or, well, I guess that covers them all. So, any other agenda suggestions for the May 19th meeting?
I wanted to bring up two things. First, since you were the only one here at the last meeting, we didn't get to experience either the wonderfulness or terribleness of room 326.
Well, now, we did find out it was the shortest meeting
I'm not surprised.
possible. So that was the benefit of it.
I'd like to give it another shot, and I would also, so we're not bouncing around, I would propose to do it over a period of 3 meetings. So for the May, June, and July meetings, I wouldn't mind giving it a try in room 326, try the new configuration that Fritz had recommended back in February, and seeing how it goes.
Okay, well, here's the question I want to ask all of you. How many meetings have you honestly watched on Government Channel from all the different meeting rooms? Downstairs, this one, or upstairs?
I think I've seen just about all of them, yeah.
I've seen more
I've just seen a couple.
in 326.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't
I don't
work,
even know what
if it
rooms
doesn't work out
numbers
for
are.
3 weeks, if we get in there next month and decide that we hate it, then we can move to come
Okay.
back down here.
I think that before then, I mean, it's fine, go ahead and vote for having it there next time, and
Sure.
I'd suggest 1 month at a time, would be my recommendation. But please, watch these stations. You can do it on the internet as well, and get an idea of how good is the sound pickup you see. Are you sometimes seeing the back of a speaker's head in certain rooms? And there are all these problems that they don't come up to this standard, and that's why, it takes some jockeying to get a speaker, say, come around behind the back of the table to get your face on from that camera out there. There are different things. If they're at the side, sometimes the people won't look at the camera, they just look, or they don't even realize there's no mic or there's a ceiling mic, and there are all these problems. So that's my goal would be to have every meeting held in a room with all this equipment. How many years away you think, Fritz?
As soon as I get the money, I'll make it happen.
Okay.
What's the staff's opinion of what's best for TV and best for the public?
I think we determined last meeting, you say that it was 6, half a dozen, we're pretty close the same.
I truly believe, and I have to say that Mr. Shepherd does bring up some good points, and which we addressed as to how to deal with those in 326. I think the situation with that is just what Mr. Pennington has said, is that it is a more conversational environment. It also would, for some of you, would feel more comfortable, more intimate, which is, if that's, would make you feel more comfortable. I think that is even more important. We cover many, many, many meetings in 326. The city council does their agenda session in there. They don't have any issues with it. In room 111, we have lots of meetings in there too. Mr. Shepherd does, his points are there. I mean, that's true. There are some times when somebody won't move, but in this situation, what we said before was the people that will present will go around to the end table, so we'll be facing the camera. Mm-hmm. And I think it is definitely due a chance to see how it goes.
Your motion was for the next 3 meetings to...
Right, because I'd hate, like in last month's meeting, it was my intention to be there, to experience it, and then possibly, if I liked it, to possibly move to make that a permanent move. If for some reason we got to the May meeting and we didn't have quorum, well, we'd end up right back here the next time. And I don't think that kind of inconsistency is good for us or good for the public. So
I agree with that. If that's your motion, I second that for the next 3 meetings. And like I said, if we get into 2 meetings and we decide to make a motion to move it right back, then that can happen. But I think that 3 is not a bad option.
I'd like to just open the discussion just for one more sec. What are we hearing from the public? What do they say regarding the meetings that are held in 326 versus here? Can they hear who's talking? I mean, I'm looking at people like Mr. Bemis and, I mean, anyone from the public. I think we need to know what the constituents say first.
Have you had any complaints from anyone from the government channel regarding not being able to hear or not being pleased with the sound quality or backs of heads or things like that for that room?
Not specifically, no.
Okay.
If there was ever an issue with that, it was because somebody did that. Somebody at the table would move the microphone away and do it on purpose, and then that would be, but
Sure.
that happens in here too, so
I think
that's
the fact
not
that
specific to that room.
I think the fact the city council uses it for its agenda sessions is good enough for me.
I
I
agree.
mean,
Well, one of the things that occurs is I noticed just in the last year or so that the camera people with the one camera system aren't getting over and zooming on who's talking. So I was in one myself and spoke at a planning commission subdivision committee last year, and when it was on television, I had the sound down, looking up at the maps, and I remembered all of it, and I never spoke. Well, actually I did, but the camera never got over there. So, and we've actually had committee members of our own, I mean, some of our committee meetings at which people would sit off to the side and be invited to speak, or it would be their role to speak, and they didn't want to come to the table for some reason. As in the case, I remember a couple of city staff members sat off to the side and spoke, and you're wondering, who is this? What's going on? And the part of open government is seeing the face and the expressions of the people. Those are things we need to address, is get the camera on the speaker somehow.
Okay.
And an automated system really helps with a person who can operate as we have in this room.
That I would not argue with you about. I have had more negative comments about meetings held in this room. Aside from the city council meeting, it's expected that the city council meeting would be in this type of format, but I've had more negative comments about board meetings being held in this room than in the other rooms.
For camera views or?
No, for the environment.
That is so
it's
large.
just not conducive to a discussion with the public. I mean, it's good for a city council that has to vote on things and have.
I'm not wearing my
Particular
glasses and
formal
not having to
presentation.
squint to see Fritz back there. So I'm all about making it more of a community type environment. So I second your motion.
I think you already did. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Let's see, 3 months, next 3 months in 320.
And I think,
326.
I mean, I think we would like to invite public feedback, especially, you know, as we, in the third month, I think would be important to invite the public to provide any feedback written. if they want.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things is I've been asked what happened to the stations still at various places. And then I've been asked what happened to that telecom board and what happened to this, that, and the other. When do you see it? So we're still publicizing somehow to get people to know you've got this exotic new schedule, because in the past the city council met on Tuesday night. It ran at 9 o'clock the next morning. That was the standard thing. It ran again that evening at 6. And it's a great idea having those midnight meetings and 4 a.m. meetings or whatever, but it still loses people. We used to have it in the newspaper every week until, was it taken out before you came to work here?
No, it was, the city council voted to not spend the money to publish agendas and schedules like that.
But the city
It's
council-
cost savings.
I don't
2
think
years
the
ago.
city was paying for it when it was in there as a whole page of public television schedules. So it became a situation where the newspaper could not afford the space, and we would have had to pay for it. So that's when we lost that coverage. Everybody had a list. Okay, anything else?
Just one other point.
Yes.
I'd like to thank Mike Russell for his service on the telecom
Oh.
board over the last 2 years. Got his email about resigning for time commitments at work, and I think he's done a fantastic job as a member of the board and as vice chair of this board particularly.
Yes.
So we may need to open up nominations or hold an election for a new vice
Well,
chair.
let's do that when we have more people, I hope, next month, okay? Is that all right with everybody?
I think that's
So
fine.
that was, I just found out about that today or yesterday, late yesterday. But, yeah, I was very sorry that he, because he was a good, he read all the material and understood it better than most of us are capable of doing. I mean, he was quick study. So, that means that we must let the public know through this medium that they too could be on this board and help make these decisions. And we do need people who will do what we were talking about Mike did, and that was read all the documents and try to keep up with what's going on. So anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
A second.
No trouble getting the motion there. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.